Hello there, and welcome to Mystic Brick. This is the second episode of our Daggerheart campaign, The Shattered Font. And today we'll be picking up right where we left off and following our adventures as they make their way through the dreadful Age of Umbra. Alright, so the last we saw of our adventurers, they had just slain the Elmisian abomination, and then after this they went about collecting what treasures they could find, a few things, a necklace which will prove to be useful in the future, and some ichor and oil that can be applied to a blade. We also discovered that someone was following us, and this will be our new companion. This is a Mushmush 16 Slug Cap, and a Mushmush is a rather interesting character. As a part of Daggerheart's racial system or heritage system, you're allowed to combine any two heritages together, and so Mushmush is a fungrel and a goblin combination, so some of both of those. Goblins in Daggerheart are generally represented with large ears, so I attempted to do that here. And then for the fungrel portion, I gave Mushmush this little mushroom cap, which I shoved on top of the ears. The torso piece is from the Anakachra from the D&D CMF line. And then Mushmush is a druid, and their weapons are a blowgun, and you can see I've represented that here with a wand. I think that turned out pretty well. And then also a whip. I also gave Mushmush this little cape from the D&D druid, which I think turned out well as well, and I think they're looking pretty spiffy. So once leaving the lair of the Elmisian abomination, our heroes journey onward together, further into the swamps and in search of the Shulk Chasm. Soon enough, they will come across something quite interesting that might lead them there. Okay, let's get started with this week's build. I am beginning with a 48 by 64 base, and the first thing I'm going to start doing here is to build the Shattered Font itself, which will really be the focal point of this battle map as we get into it. While I am doing that, I thought it might be a good idea to relate to you some of the story and what has happened so far with our companions, the places and puzzles they've encountered before reaching the Cistern of Broken Echoes within which the Shattered Font is hidden. Our little group stumbles upon the Cistern of Broken Echoes as we are traversing the swamps on our way to the Shulk Chasm, and we find it simply too irresistible to ignore. For some of us especially, this find is very intriguing, for there seems to be some indication that this might be a forgotten shrine to one of the veiled gods. In the small little grove that precedes the entrance to the Cistern of Broken Echoes, our party is confronted with a puzzle that we will have to solve. This then is our GM's description of the entrance and the puzzle. Beneath the skeletal embrace of a dead willow, we discover what might have once been an entrance, if entrance is the right word for something that seems to exhale shadows like a dying breath. Moss has claimed the stonework so thoroughly that the archway appears to be bleeding green, its surface slick with moisture that has no earthly source. Above, carved into stone worn smooth by decades of weeping fog, a closed eye stares down at us, not carved shut, but sewn shut, with what looks like veins of darker stone threading through the lids. The air here tastes of copper pennies and forgotten prayer. 5 chimes hang from the willow's gnarled branches like the finger bones of a giant's hand, each one crafted from yellowed bone and hollowed reed. They sway in the wind that touches nothing else, yet make no sound, as if the very air refuses to let them sing. In the mud below, a handprint glows with the faintest blue light, its edges crackling like frost on a window pane. The print is too large to be human, its fingers too long, and when we stare at it, we swear we can see it pressing deeper into the earth, as if something on the other side is trying to push through. So the puzzle here was simply that the stone archway was sealed by a ward of silence, and in order for us to break that magical spell, our party had to remain silent for exactly 1 minute. I just want to quickly relay here that Daggerheart has this really cool system of stress accrual, which happens when you interact with things in the environment or anywhere in the world. You can gain stress, and if you max out your stress, it will affect your hit points eventually. So this is something to really consider carefully. Many of our characters, while trying to solve this puzzle, did accrue some of that stress because we were not staying silent long enough. And you can act that out in the game, which I think is a really cool thing to do, show how your characters are dealing with stress. So it took us some time to solve this puzzle, unfortunately, and when we were through it, some of our characters were definitely full up on stress, which was, an interesting game dynamic. But once we had managed to figure that out, the magical stone archway opened and revealed stairs that led down into the darkness below. The stairs spiraled downward, and once we were at the bottom, we had another puzzle to contend with. I'm going to read that for you now. The steps end at a circular chamber carved deep into the earth, its domed ceiling lost in shadow above. We have descended perhaps 30 feet, yet the air feels heavier here, as if the weight of the world above presses down with a malevolent intent. 4 crystal obelisks rise from cracked pedestals, like fingers of some buried giant reaching toward a light they'll never touch, each one humming with a different frequency that makes our teeth ache. The crimson crystal bleeds light in slow rhythmic pulses, like a heart that refuses to stop beating even in death. Its glow paints the curved walls the color of old wounds. The sapphire crystal flickers erratically, its azure light dancing like starlight reflected on black water, casting shifting shadows that seem to move independently of their sources. The golden crystal burns steady and warm, its honeyed glow the only thing in this buried place that doesn't feel fundamentally wrong, though that itself feels like a trap. But it's the 4th pedestal that draws the eye like a broken bone through skin. Where once an obelisk stood, now only jagged crystal teeth remain, scattered across the floor like the fragments of a shattered mirror. Each shard still holds traces of cold white light, and when we look at them, we see not our reflection, but glimpses of faces we've never met. Eyes that plead silent for release. At the chamber's heart, a shallow basin carved from black stone bears an inscription in script that seems to writhe when we're not looking directly at it. So immediately upon entering this chamber, Hickory decides to walk over to the broken shards of the crystal obelisk and sit with them in silence. This, unfortunately, was the only successful attempt at solving this puzzle. For the others, we attempted to pour our emotions in what we thought would be the corresponding crystals, but unfortunately those were incorrect, and the first attempt meant that one of those crystals shattered and a massive crack split the bowl below us. We pressed on despite this obvious error, and eventually the whole system bowl shattered and released a vicious wave of energy which some of us managed to dodge while others were unfortunately affected by it. However, this did reveal to us a passage below the broken cistern. Relying on the provided cues, Lulu, Appetent, and Jules decide to pour all their energy, either magically or emotively, into the cistern in order to try and open it. They succeeded in this, and the cistern spiraled open, revealing another staircase. Haggard, and perhaps a little unprepared at this point due to all the stress we had accrued, we decide to enter the chamber we find at the bottom of those stairs. As we descend the final stair, the chamber opens wide, cavernous, and black-stoned, its architecture spiraling inward like a maelstrom of forgotten prayer. Broken pews, slick with lichen and old blood, line the edges of a central pit, where a massive, shattered font lies cracked in 3, leaking not water, but a slow ooze of silver ichor that pools like mercury on the floor. Flickering ether light from ancient sconces barely illuminate a strange black obelisk at the center of the room, where a twisted statue stands. Its hooded visage bears no face, only a smooth void, mouth agape and a silent scream. In this place of abandoned irreverence, buried far from any sun, you are not alone. So these creatures, which are known as echo hosts, are zombie-like manifestations, and the minifigs that I've come up with here are mere representations of those echo hosts. But a more accurate description would be that these are human or bestial corpses animated by fragments of lost souls absorbed into the Umbra. Their bodies are gaunt, their limbs lanky and stretched, and their mouths gape open in unnatural directions. Suddenly then, the battle is upon us. Immediately, Jules jumps down into the pit and confronts one of the echo hosts. It takes a swipe at her and misses, and she realizes that something is very wrong here because it starts calling out to her in her dead father's name. Making a roll against that deception, Jules is able to discern that it is indeed just that, a deception, but retreats to the safety of the stairway. Both Hickory and Appetent then rush forward, and Appetent, gentle soul that he is, attempts to lay a hand upon the host and see if he can calm it somehow. This unfortunately doesn't appear to work too well. Lulu fires off a ball of flame at the host closest to Appetent, but misses. Hickory, in turn, hears the name of his creator uttered by one of the hosts. Mush Mush quickly descends into the pit and confronts the host closest to them by lashing out at the creature with a poisoned whip. Hickory decides to confront the echo hosts as they suddenly approach at a thundering pace. Lulu then vaults over the stair railing and also over some pews. She fans out some flaming blades before her and thrusts them at both enemies, striking true. Jules decides to rush to Appetent's side and help him with the two hosts that have come up on him quickly. And in an incredible feat of strength, Appetent is able to shove one of the hosts into the pool of ichor. It disappears into the silver sludge without a splash, as if sinking into paint. Jules, having seen through the deception of the echo hosts, decides through trickery to coax the next one over to the pool of ichor, in an attempt to replicate what Appetent has just achieved. Meanwhile, on the other side of the room, as the battle rages on, Mush Mush ducks down behind a pew and manages to turn himself into, my goodness, a spider. This will be part of the druidic class feature. Back over to Appetent and Jules, the creature that was shoved into the ichor suddenly emerges from it and grabs Jules, pulling her under. Appetent manages to shove over his other assailant and then looks around in terror as he witnesses his companion disappear beneath the surface of the ichor. Lulu, noticing what has happened, yells at Hickory to keep the two echo hosts busy and runs over to Appetent in order to help him pull Jules from the ichor. Mush Mush and Hickory battle on. And after flailing about with the creature, Hickory is able to fell it. But as this happens, the echo host rips open its own chest and assaults Hickory with a false memory of how he was powered down by his creator before the fall and the apostasy. Having pulled Jules from the ichor, Appetent then attempts to heal her with a prayer. At the same time, Lulu fires off another ball of flame into the face of the echo host, who is prone on the floor. Mush Mush manages to sling a web at the final echo host on that side of the chamber and ensnares it against the wall. Hickory, now fully stressed, begins to rust on his exterior surface and moves slowly in shock. As Appetent turns to coup de grace the echo host lying on the floor, its face suddenly splits open, revealing many other sharp-toothed mouths within. They release a silent scream, petrifying Appetent in place. Okay, time for the final boss of this act, and I'm going to read you a description from our GM. The Bleeding Hollow was once a sacrificial altar or statue to a forgotten veiled god, long buried beneath layers of silver silt and rot. Over the centuries, the umbra seeped into its broken stone, grafting sinew, flesh, and pulsing blood vessels to its cracked surface. As it emerges from the ichor, the twisted statue standing before the obelisk suddenly makes terrible sense. It was never carved to stand alone. It was one of two fixtures, brother to something now much larger, something that has been sleeping beneath the font, feeding on decades of corrupted offerings. So following that description as best I could, this is what I came up with. I think I'm pretty happy with it. You can see I used the Venom face as its head, but otherwise, I think it looks pretty mean and terrifying. Our heroes stand in shock as this monstrosity emerges from the ichor, and suddenly we realize this fight has only just begun. Jules immediately fires off a crossbow bolt and manages to puncture the creature, doing some damage, if not minimal. Lulu finishes off the prone echo host, releasing Appetent from his petrified status. Mush Mush manages to clamber atop a root and discovers by communicating with it that the beast has a weakness, its belly. Hickory, meanwhile, takes a massive swipe at the creature. Lulu unleashes chaos, ejecting two flaming orbs at the creature and hitting it in its gaping maw. The creature wails and turns to her. Hickory intercepts the tentacle's path, screaming, "I am your shield," and takes the brunt of the damage in Lulu's place. Mush Mush scuttles over into the fray, relaying their information from the roots to their friends and biting the creature on its undead hand, poisoning it. Appetent at this point initiates a team tag maneuver, and with a great strength of feet and the help of Hickory, they are both able to flip the creature over onto its back. The beast begins to flail wildly, and Appetent is able to thrust their Vajra into the beast's belly. Hickory wastes no time and hops directly onto the beast, slashing at it with his massive axe. The beast grapples with him but is unable to restrain him. Jules then, with a cunning show of deception, is able to transform herself into Arthedius, the God King, and manages to claim its attention with false promises of divinity and forever rest. A little shaken by the sudden appearance of the bearded apostatic God King next to her, Lulu jumps backwards over the pews, barely finding her footing. Mush Mush, meanwhile, wanders over to the other statue, ensnares it in webs, and yanks it off the plinth, hoping to crack it. It falls to the ground unbroken. Jules, in an impressive feat of agility, jumps over the pews and back up onto the stairs, still maintaining the creature's vision. She then dispels her disguise. At this point, the creature is looking all the worse for wear, and with a mighty yell, Hickory takes one final slash at its belly. Poison running deep through its veins, it takes one final wail and collapses just outside of the pool of ichor. It is defeated. In the aftermath, our heroes scour the room for clues and treasure. Lulu interprets the glyphs that are upon the obelisk. Both Mush Mush and Appetent decide to give the corrupted creature some final peace and rest, saying prayers over its corpse and covering it in blooming flowers. Jules, meanwhile, searches the chamber and is able to find some very useful treasure. Hickory, finding himself no longer accosted by the false images of his creator, stands silently before the plinth. As he does so, a doorway suddenly opens before him, revealing another set of stairs leading deeper into the cistern's depths. Okay, that is the fight completed, and here are the items that we found after. Obsidian prayer beads, which I am representing here with the gold ring. These are a string of volcanic black glass beads. that draw the wearer's attention to uncorrupted divine magic and helps ward off evil when we are resting. The ceremonial dagger of severance. This adds an additional +1 damage to Umber cursed creatures, and when delivering a killing blow on such a creature, it prevents them from joining the Umbra. Vial of Sacred Tears, which contains drops of what appear to be liquid starlight. These are the tears wept by a veiled god, and when used, it will add a 1d4 +1 to health and remove 1 stress, or add a +3 to a single roll made to resist Umbra corruption. Lastly, a very valuable item, the Resonance Stone of Acrelios, which reacts to the presence of other divine relics or uncorrupted sacred sites by glowing brighter. It can also allow the bearer to predict weather changes up to 24 hours in advance, and it can summon a light rainfall in a 1-mile radius for up to 1 hour, which is very important in this world. It has some story significance as well, which we will soon discover, I am sure. This then is just a look at our heroes with those items in hand. They are ready to venture on into the depths of the cistern and possibly into the Shulk Chasm beyond. Join in next time to find out what happens. Hey, thanks so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed the story so far, the adventure that our heroes are undergoing, all the terrors they are facing. There is so much more to come. We'll probably put out a different video next week not pertaining to Daggerheart, so look out for that. I hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.